Friday the 13th, The Mask of Jason Voorhees. Chapter 5, Voorhees' House. The sky had just started to get a ting of crimson when Ryan's truck approached the rundown mansion that had once been the home of the Voorhees family. Micki took a deep breath when she caught sight of the house. From years of dealing with the supernatural, she had become attuned to the energies around her. If the Voorhees house had been a battery, it would have been ready to overload. The feeling of evil was oppressive. Ryan parked the truck on the gravel driveway in front of the house. Getting out, Micki looked over the facade of the house, trying to imagine how the house looked during a more happy time, when a young Jason Voorhees played on the jungle gym, which was now rusted and laying on its side in the corner of the front yard. But it was hard to associate the building with its broken windows and scales of peeling dirty white paint with anything pleasant. Then she noticed the hole, which was nearby the jungle gym. Though it didn't look recent, it still struck her interest. Heading over to the edge of it, she looked down and jumped back with a startled yelp. The entire hole was halfway full with large, bloated white worms. "The locals call those hell worms," she heard Ryan say from beside her, further startling her. She hadn't even noticed that Ryan had gotten out of the truck. People first noticed them about 6 months after we sent Jason to hell. Since then, they've become a real infestation in the woods. They're nasty little fuckers. They've got pointy little teeth that hurt like hell if you get bit. "None of my sources mention them," Micki admitted. "I don't doubt it. The locals have kept them as a sort of dirty secret. Many of them think the worms are Satan's revenge on us." "And what do you think?" "Don't ask me," he said. "But they've definitely chosen an appropriate place to nest." Micki looked at him inquiringly. "That hole's right in the spot where Jason was dragged down," he informed her. Micki looked down at the hole with renewed interest. "The question is, why would anyone be out here digging in the first place?" Ryan said. "Or what were they digging for?" Micki said, looking up at him knowingly. But she knew they both knew the answer to that. "So, what do you say we get this over with?" Ryan asked, handing Micki a metal flashlight he'd pulled out of his coat pocket. "I really don't relish the idea of spending the evening rummaging through this house." Ryan looked over at the mansion uncomfortably. "If you'd rather, you could wait out here and I could look around on my own," Micki offered. "You know me better than that," he told her, pulling out a flashlight of his own and starting toward the house. Heading up onto the porch and up to the front door, Ryan unhooked his keyring from his belt. Micki looked at him inquiringly again. "Jessica gave me the key before her and the baby left," Ryan said. "I guess she figured I'd eventually have to come back here." Upon entering the house, they were immediately assaulted by the smell of dampness and mold. The entry hall was dark, so the two of them turned on their flashlights. Ryan found the light switch and tried it, but there was no power. "I guess Jessica had the power cut off," Ryan said. He remembered that when he, Jessica, and Creighton Duke went up against Jason in this house, the power had been turned on. At the time, he hadn't realized how strange that was. Looking around, Micki was surprised to find that the entry hall and living room were still fully furnished. There were even some very valuable-looking paintings and family photographs still hanging on the moldy walls. "Diana never had the heart to sell any of her mother's things," Ryan explained, after seeing the look on her face. "I'm surprised with all the hoopla about Jason that souvenir hunters haven't cleaned the place out." "Well, only the townspeople know the location of Voorhees' house, and after what happened to Robert Campbell and Josh in this place, they want to leave well enough alone." "Well, at least that'll make the search a bit easier, I guess." "You still haven't told me what we're after, Micki," Ryan reminded her. "We need to find anything we can about Pamela Voorhees' stepbrother." "How did I know you were going to say that?" Ryan said, shaking his head. "All Betty had to do was mention anything close to the name Lewis." "It's more than that," Micki said. "I had suspicions long before Betty mentioned the name. Since I started researching these murders, I saw definite similarities between the cursed items we've dealt with and the curse of Jason Voorhees." "How so?" Ryan asked, intrigued. "I've noticed that Uncle Lewis's cursed items, This curse has altered its form at times when it has come close to being defeated, Micki said. Think about it. Up until Tommy Jarvis supposedly killed Jason for the second time, reports indicated that he was definitely a living being, though disfigured. Yet after he came back, he was described as rotted and corpse-like. Yeah, I know all about this, Ryan said. So what's your point? When you dealt with Jason, his body had been blown up, and somehow Jason went from body to body until his body was restored through Diana. Yeah, his heart turned into some sort of symbiotic snake thing. Exactly. And now, since you and Jessica sent Jason to hell, the curse is altered yet again, and now we're dealing with people being possessed by Jason's mask. Ryan contemplated what Micki had told him for a few moments. Though he still had gaps in his memory about his time at Curious Goods, he did remember an incident that seemed disturbingly akin to what they were dealing with here. It had to do with the mirrored compact. He recalled that when he and Micki first dealt with the compact, it caused anyone caught by the light reflected from the mirror to fall in love with its carrier. Then, after they failed to get it the first time, it re-emerged, but this time it had the power to give an aging model back the youth that she desired. I see your point, Ryan said with resignation. Good, Micki said. Then let's get started. I think the best place to look would be in Pamela's bedroom. Why do you say that? If Pamela was as close to her brother as Betty implied, she'd keep any letters or pictures close by. It's a girl thing. Well, in regards to girl things, you're the expert, Ryan said as he led her up the creaking staircase to the upper level of the house. I'd be very careful, though, Ryan told her as they walked down the upper hall. The floor they were walking on was creaking as bad as the stairs. No one's been up here for years, and I doubt these floors are in very good condition. That's obvious, Micki said, thankful she'd decided to wear her Indian-style boots, which allowed her to feel the give on the board she was walking on. Ryan, on the other hand, was wearing steel-toed boots, so she was a bit more concerned about him. I think the master bedroom is here, Ryan told her, flashing the beam of his flashlight on an ornate lacquered hardwood door at the far end of the hall as they approached. The sculptured brass doorknob was green with oxidation. Ryan grabbed it, halfway thinking that either it would break off in his hand or be rusted tight by years of disuse. But surprisingly, the knob turned and, when he pushed, the door creaked open. The room was indeed the master bedroom, but it had seen better days. Moisture had caused the flowered wallpaper on the walls to bubble and come loose. The wood furniture had mold growing on them and had started to decay. Decay had turned the bedding into stinking, tattered rags. Let's check this out fast, okay? Ryan said, looking a bit pale and sweaty. I don't know how long I can handle this. Then he started sneezing. Lucky for me, I'm not allergic, Micki thought. Still, the smell was enough motivation for her. While Ryan, who was periodically doubling over with sneezing fits, was dumping out the contents of the two large dressers along the wall in front of the bed, she checked out the closets. But all she found was moldy, moth-eaten clothes and shoes. She even tapped around on the back of the closets, but didn't find any secret hiding places. But then, when she started checking out the drawers of the bedside tables, she found a couple items that struck her interest. In the drawer of the left bedside table was found a rosary and a Roman Catholic Bible. This was interesting because she knew for a fact that Elias Voorhees was a non-practicing member of the Mennonites. As for Pamela, she was registered as a member of the Episcopal Church. So the question was, why would she find Catholic items in a non-Catholic household, especially one with as bloody a past as the Voorhees' family? Picking up the battered Bible, Micki opened it. Picking up her light from where she'd laid it on top of the table, she pointed it at the Bible and found the initials R.M. written in the inner cover. Now she had yet another mystery to solve in this ever-growing tapestry. Micki, Ryan said nasally from the foot of the bed. I've come up with nothing over here. How about you? Just more questions, she said, slipping the Bible and rosary in her coat pocket. "There's still this," he said, shining his flashlight on a large hardwood chest sitting at the foot of the bed. Micki came over and looked down at the chest. It had a very imposing-looking rusted lock on it. "Can you open it?" "I'll have to get the crowbar out of the truck," he said, holding back a sneeze. "I'm a little worried about that hallway floor out there. I don't think I can handle too many more trips." "We'll have to risk it," Micki said. "If I was Pamela, this would be the spot I'd put such personal items." "You mean I'll have to risk it," Ryan reminded her. Micki was about to say something, but Ryan waved her off. "At the very least, it'll get me out of this damned room," he said, blowing his runny nose. Then he headed for the door. Micki followed him as far as the door and watched as he headed down the hall. She could hear the floor creaking as he walked across it. A couple of times she heard the floor crack and feared Ryan might fall through, but he managed to get to the stairs and head down them. Standing alone in the doorway waiting, Micki looked around nervously. Without Ryan's presence to comfort her, the feeling of pure evil around her intensified. It was like the very walls of the house pulsed with it. Then she took a deep breath to try and calm herself. It didn't help. "Please hurry, Ryan," she said, though she knew he couldn't hear her. Ryan felt a flood of relief flow through him the moment he headed out the front door, off the porch, and started for the truck. Though he'd never admit it to Micki, being in that house again bothered him. It wasn't so much the fear that something would happen. It was more that he remembered the fear of what had occurred before. Pulling out his handkerchief, he blew his runny nose. Even his nose was feeling a lot better. It was then he noticed the squishing sound as he walked. Looking down, he was amazed to see that the ground beneath his feet was covered with writhing hellworms. "Holy shit!" he said, surprised. Then one of the worms slithered over the top of Ryan's shoe and slipped under his pant leg. Before he could do anything to stop it, the worm clamped its pointy teeth into the flesh of his ankle. Ryan let out a yelp of pain and grabbed at his lower leg. But as he did, another worm lifted itself up like a snake and lunged at his bare wrist. But Ryan managed to swat that one away. This seemed to agitate the other worms. They started to hiss at Ryan. Ignoring the pain in his ankle, he started running for the open back end of the truck. As he ran, he could feel the pounding of lunging hellworms impacting against his pant legs and shoes. Then he took a flying leap and landed hard on his front on the hard metal bed of the truck. Chapter 6. Discoveries. Micki heard a loud bang outside and knew something was wrong. Swiftly, she made her way down the hall and started down the stairs. Halfway down there was a loud cracking sound and one of the steps broke under her weight. Micki lost her balance and started to fall forward, but luckily she managed to grab the banister. Though the banister groaned in response, it still held. Taking a calming breath, Micki righted herself and continued down the stairs. Then she rushed out the door. Outside on the porch, Micki heard Ryan cursing. Shining her light around, though, she couldn't see him. "Ryan!" she yelled. "Stay back!" she heard Ryan yell at her. She could tell that his voice came from the direction of the truck, but she still couldn't see him. "What's wrong?" she asked, shining her flashlight around again. She still couldn't see anything unusual. Then she heard the hissing. Pointing her flashlight beam at the ground, she saw a writhing, hissing mass of hellworms covering the ground in front of the house. "My God!" she said. Surprisingly, she noticed that though the worms were actively aggressive, they were making no attempt to wriggle onto the porch after her. She pointed her flashlight toward the truck and saw Ryan. He was throwing something out. "Son of a bitch!" she heard him cuss. Then she saw him jump out of the back of the truck and come running through the worms and onto the porch. Momentarily startled by his stunt, Micki was about to say something, but Ryan cut her off. "Well, come on," Ryan said, holding up the crowbar he'd grabbed from the back of the truck. "Let's crack that thing open and get the hell out of here." Then, before she could say a word, he headed inside the mansion. Micki stood for a moment. Then she flashed her light one last time at the hissing, snapping mass of hellworms. "Just another night here in sleepy old Crystal Lake," she thought, as she headed inside after Ryan. By the time Micki arrived back at Pamela Voorhees' room, Ryan was already busy prying the lock with the crowbar. Though the lock groaned in response, it held fast. Then, after a few more minutes, there was a loud squill and cracking sound as the lock finally broke open. Ryan dropped the crowbar, grabbed his flashlight from the nearby dresser, and flipped the lid of the trunk open. Flashing his light inside, he bent down and pulled out a white wedding gown. Micki came over. "And this is just the frosting on the cake," Ryan said, shining his flashlight into the trunk again. Micki looked down and quickly covered her mouth to keep from throwing up. In the trunk, next to a stack of books, were 2 glass jugs containing 2 hearts, pickled inside. What she guessed was formaldehyde. Ryan covered the jugs with the wedding dress. Then he picked up one of the books and examined its cover. "Not exactly what we're looking for, but useful nevertheless," he announced, handing her the book. Looking down at the cover instantly convinced her. On the cover, in gold leaf, was the title, Diary of Pamela Voorhees, 1957. Taking the book and laying it on one of the dressers, she started quickly looking through it. Then, after a few moments, she finally found a section that caught her interest. July 28th, 1957. "Oh God, why have you done this to me? Why have you taken my precious little boy away? For the last 3 days I've stayed awake all night praying that you would find a way to make this all just a big mistake and my boy would be all right. But now I know that won't be the case. I realized this the moment the sheriff said he was ending the search, you bastard. You won't even let me have the closure of having his body to bury. Are you satisfied? You've taken the only piece of joy in my life." Micki would have continued reading, but Ryan distracted her by letting out a loud sneeze. Micki looked over at him. While she'd been going over the diary, Ryan had been taking the other diaries out of the trunk and stacking them on top of Pamela Voorhees' wedding dress. Now he was wrapping the dress around the books and started to tie the bundle together. Ryan took out his handkerchief and blew his nose. He wasn't looking good. His face was rosy red. Perspiration was dripping from his face. He looked up at her with bloodshot eyes and asked, Are we done now?" "Actually, there's one more place we need to check out before we leave," she told him, aware of the apparent disregard she was showing toward his condition. "Excuse me?" he said, surprised. "We have to check out Jason's room," she told him. Ryan's jaw dropped. "You're nuts," he said, wiping his runny nose with his coat sleeve. "Look at how bad this room is. I can only guess what kind of a death trap Jason's room must be." "Still, we need to at least make the attempt," Micki told him, a determined look on her face. "I still say this is a mistake," Ryan said, as he and Micki came up to the door halfway down the hall from Pamela Voorhees' bedroom. "Ryan, it would be a mistake if we didn't," Micki said. "If anything, we'll get some new insights about who Jason was before he drowned." Micki noticed that Ryan was looking noticeably better now that they were out of Pamela's moldy bedroom. Still, she felt a bit guilty about pushing him into this, but she knew it had to be done. If they were going to put an end to this madness, knowledge would be their best weapon. Ryan tried the door, but this time he found it locked tight. "Now what?" he asked, though the answer was obvious. "Well, we'll just have to break it in," she said. "You mean I'll have to," Ryan corrected her. Ryan threw himself against the door, but the only thing that happened was he hurt his shoulder. Cursing and rubbing his aching shoulder, he repeated this a couple more times, but the door held fast. Then he backed up against the opposite wall in the cramped hallway and tried to give the door a running jump kick. The door still held, but he heard an unmistakable cracking sound. Encouraged by this, he continued pounding the door with more kicks. Each time the cracking sound became louder. Finally, the door broke open, but at the same instant the floor beneath Ryan's feet collapsed and sent him falling into the room below, which turned out to be the kitchen. Ryan landed feet first on the kitchen table. Two of the table's legs broke under the impact, sending him tumbling onto the floor. "Ryan!" Micki screamed, dropping down to her knees and flashing her flashlight down through the hole, trying to find Ryan. She finally found him sitting up unsteadily. "My God, are you all right?" "Great," he said. "I really get a kick out of the whole macho falling through the floor thing." Micki found this strangely comforting. If he's feeling good enough to make sarcastic cracks, then I guess he's all right, she thought. Ryan slowly and achingly got up. "I'll be up in a bit," he yelled up to her. "I'll start checking out the room," she told him. "Hold on there," he said, concerned. "You just saw me fall through the floor, and now you want to just waltz into a room that's been more than likely closed up for over 40 years? Doesn't that sound a little bit risky?" he yelled. "You're the one who wanted to get this over with so we could get out of here." "I'm not in that much of a hurry," he told her. "Just wait for me to get up there." Then he started to limp out of sight. Micki shook her head in frustration. "Typical Ryan Dallion," she thought. "Even after everything we've been through, he still thinks of me as a weak woman that needs to be protected." She looked over at Jason's room. Ryan has successfully kicked open the door. "Well, I can still have a look," she said to herself, shining the beam of the flashlight through the open doorway. What she saw amazed her. The room, which she expected to be dusty and moldy, looked pristine. There weren't even any cobwebs. The darkened room looked like no time had passed since it had last been occupied. "To hell with waiting," Micki said aloud to herself, as she carefully stepped over the hole in the floor in front of the doorway and into the room. The moment her foot touched the floor of the bedroom, the room lit up with light. Startled, Micki stumbled into the room. She had to blink her eyes a few times to get rid of the spots from the flash. Once her vision cleared, she was amazed to find that the room was illuminated by sunlight shining through the window. Then she heard a shuffling sound coming from her right. She looked over and saw a young boy, who looked about 12, standing by the bed, slipping on a pair of blue jeans over a pair of white swimming trunks. "Jason!" she heard a woman's voice call from the doorway. Micki spun around and saw a blonde woman wearing a white t-shirt with the name Camp Crystal Lake written in blue on the left breast side and white shorts. Micki recognized the woman from her research. The woman was Pamela Voorhees. But how can this be? Micki thought. "Jason, you're not ready yet," Pamela Voorhees said from the door. "I forgot my trunks, Mama," the young boy said from the bed. He was now sitting on the bed, putting on a pair of white tennis shoes. Micki realized that neither Pamela nor young Jason were aware of her presence. "Yes, you definitely don't want to forget those," Pamela said. "Bobby and Jenny said I could swim out to the buoy today. I hope one of them is going with you," she said, a note of concern in her tone. "Remember, you're still not that strong of a swimmer." Pamela Voorhees walked over to the bed and right through Micki. "What am I seeing, ghost?" Micki asked herself silently. Pamela Voorhees sat down on the bed next to her son. "Mom," young Jason said, irritated, "I'm not a baby anymore." "I know that," Pamela said introspectively. "Soon you'll be all grown up and won't need me anymore." "I'll always need you, Mama." Pamela smiled at her son and gave him a hug. Micki watched this sentimental moment and realized what she was seeing. This must have been the very last time Jason was in this room, the day he drowned. What she was seeing was a replay of those events. It's a shame, she thought, thinking of the insanity that she could stop if she could only warn these two people of the outcome of that day. She could only watch helplessly as both mother and son got up off the bed, walked through her, and headed out the door. As she watched them leave, Micki heard the sound of a woman weeping coming from the bed. Turning towards the sound, she was amazed to see Pamela Voorhees again. This time, she was sitting on the bed holding a framed picture and crying. She was no longer wearing the Camp Crystal Lake shirt or shorts, but a wrinkled-looking flowered house dress. "It's enough!" Micki heard a man's voice say from behind her, causing her to jump. Turning around, she came face to face with a heavy-built, red-haired man with a long beard, which lacked a mustache. The man looked to be at least 20 years older than Pamela. Micki instantly realized that this man could only be Elias Voorhees. Like Jason and Pamela had done before, Elias passed through Micki and went over to his wife. Micki noticed that though Elias had abandoned his Mennonite roots, he still retained the look. Besides the beard and lack of mustache, which were the typical style for Mennonite men, he also wore a plain white button-down shirt and black pants that were held up with black suspenders. On his feet, he wore a pair of beaten-up brown work boots. "There has been enough time spent on grieving the boy, my wife," Elias said, putting a comforting hand on his wife's shoulder. Pamela slapped it away. "Enough for you," she said, glaring up at him. "You never loved him." Elias looked away from her for a moment, a look of barely concealed hurt on his face. "That is not true," he said after a moment. "You resented him because I loved him more than I ever loved you," she said venomously. "No, wife, I did not resent the boy," he told her. "The truth is you had an unnatural affection for him, much like that you have for your stepbrother." "What kind of filth are you trying to imply?" "I'm not implying anything," he said. "I have eyes. Is it not logical that I can see? And what I have seen has revealed much." "What kind of foolishness have you come up with now?" "Oh, woman, be thankful for the sake of your son's eternal soul that the sacrilege you have committed cannot be called incest, but simply being unfaithful to me." "This is insanity," Pamela Voorhees said. Micki thought she looked guilty as sin. "Deny if you wish," he said emotionlessly. "It matters little to me. What is important is that this house return to a semblance of normalcy." Pamela laughed at him insanely. "Normal? You want things to go back to normal? How can things ever go back to normal? My child, my sweet, sweet Jason is dead." "There will be other children, I assure you." Pamela looked at him with disgust. "You honestly think I'm going to let you touch me after what you've said to me?" "You are my wife," he said, an icy smile on his lips. Without another word, he headed for the door. "You dare try to force me, and I'll kill you!" she yelled after him. "You hear me? I'll kill you!" Then Micki watched as Pamela broke down and started crying again. Then Pamela looked at the picture in her hands again. "Oh, Louis, I need you. Where are you?" she said, placing the picture on the desk. "Micki!" Micki heard Ryan yell from behind her. Turning around, she was startled to find that the room had gone dark again. The only light she could see was from her and Ryan's flashlights. "My God, Micki, don't move!" he yelled at her. Micki shifted her weight. She heard the floor beneath her feet creak. Shining her flashlight down, she was surprised to see that the wood floor looked rotted. Then she shined the flashlight around the room and saw it had changed. Somehow, in the last few seconds, the room had grown old and rotted. "Hold on, Micki! I'll figure out a way to get you out of there," Ryan said from just beyond the doorway on the other side of the hole in the floor. "I can't imagine how you were able to get that far in there without that floor caving in." "The room wasn't like this when I came in," she told him. She started shining her light over by the bed, which was nothing more than a rat-eaten mess of rotted stuffing in a moldy wooden frame. She needed to see if something was still there. As the beam of her flashlight went across the top of the desk, which was next to the bed, it caught a dull glint. Yes, she thought, as she saw that glint came from the tarnished-looking picture frame. It's still there. Cautiously, Micki started to move toward the desk. The boards under her feet started creaking dangerously. Are you insane? Ryan screamed at her. You're gonna get yourself killed! Micki managed to make it to the desk. She picked up the picture frame and slipped it under her shirt. Then she started back towards the doorway. The closer she got, the looser the boards seemed to get, and the more that they groaned. Finally, she heard and felt the boards begin to crack under her feet. Panicking, she started to run. That's when the floor decided to cave in. Just as the boards beneath her feet started to drop out from under her, Micki leaped for the doorway, hoping she had enough of a kick to make it the rest of the way. As she flew through the doorway, she made a desperate grab for the edge of the hallway floor. She let out a scream when the piece of board she grabbed onto broke, and she started to fall into the gaping maw of broken and jutting boards beneath. But then she felt a hand firmly grab onto her wrist. Looking up, she saw Ryan hanging partially over the side of the hole, holding onto her arm with one hand. His face was crinkled into a mask of pain. I don't know how long I can hold on, he said through gritted teeth. You're gonna have to make a grab for the edge. Ryan started to swing her slowly. As his swing gained more momentum, Micki tried to grab the edge of the hallway floor. After a few passes, she managed to get a grip and Ryan was able to pull her up. Exhausted, Micki and Ryan laid on the floor beside the hole that had once been Jason's room. I hope it was worth it. Oh, God, Ryan said, groaning and rubbing his aching shoulder. The picture, Micki thought to herself frantically. She grabbed under her shirt and let out a sigh of relief when she felt the edge of the frame. Pulling the picture frame out, she started to dust it off, though most of the dust had rubbed off during all the excitement. Have you gotten yourself a death wish since you've been gone? Ryan asked sarcastically. You couldn't seriously have got yourself nearly killed over an old picture, really? This isn't just any old picture, she said, handing it over to him. Ryan looked at the picture and gasped. In the photo, standing next to a young Jason Voorhees and his mother, looking much younger than when Ryan had last saw him, was unmistakably Louis Vondredi. Chapter 7. The Killer Instinct. So, Betty, you say people really don't understand your husband, Crazy Ralph? Carol Martinez said, speaking into her microphone. In front of her was Jamal, standing behind the video camera, which was sitting on a tripod. Kneeling beside him was Sean, who had a pair of earphones on his head and was tending to the sound equipment. To either side of them were two sets of lights, their beams refracted by white pieces of poster board. My Ralph was not crazy, Betty said, clearly incensed by Carol's question. He knew things. He tried to warn people about the cuss on Camp Crystal Lake, but nobody would listen. That's why all those young people died. So you're trying to say that Crazy Ralph should be seen as a hero, not as a drunk with a hang-up on religion? Ralph was a soldier of the Lord. He might have had a weakness for the demon liquor, but he cared for the people of this town. He cared so much that he died for them, Betty said, tears running down her cheek. Carol was less than sympathetic. From what I heard, the reason he got done in was because he was busy peeking in the cabins of female counselors and didn't see Jason coming. That is a fucking lie, Betty burst out, her composure broken. How dare you say anything as disgusting as that about such a fine man? You fucking whore. Oh my, Carol said, feigning surprise. Does Grandma have a truck driver mouth? How dare you? After the terrible things you've said about Ralph, how dare you judge me? Betty said, enraged. You are not worthy to bend over and spit shine my husband's shoes. Oh, I bet a pervert like him would like that, Carol said, amused. I bet while he was quoting the Bible, he was looking up little girls' dresses. I've had enough of this. You're not interested in the truth about my Ralph. You just want to say bad things about him, Betty said, ripping the microphone from the lapel of her waitress uniform. I hope you fucking bastards go to Camp Crystal Lake and die. Then she threw the microphone at Carol and stomped back into the coffee shop, but not before giving them the finger. "What was that all about, Chief?" Sean asked, surprised, taking off the earphones and standing up. "That wasn't an interview, it was an attack." "I have to agree with the brother man, girl," Jamal said, looking up from camera and pulling his glasses down over his bloodshot eyes. "That was a bit on the aggressive side." Boys, that wasn't a serious interview," Carol said with a satisfied smirk. "That was simply a stepping stone on the way to a goal." Both of her associates looked at her with confused expressions. "In order for us to get Freeman's address, that old hag insisted on me promising that we'd interview her about that drunken loser of a husband of hers." "So you humored her in the most sadistic way possible," Sean said, disapprovingly. Carol looked amused. "We can still use the interview. With some creative editing, we can have that old witch saying that her husband was a son of a bitch." "Oh, I love the sound of creative integrity," Jamal commented. Sean shook his head. "You are such a bitch." "Keep with me, boys, and you'll learn what it takes to make it big in this world," Carol said. "Then, what now, oh wise one?" Sean asked. "I promised the professor an interview with Freeman, and I'm going to get it, no matter what." "But we don't got the address, darling," Jamal pointed out. "Or do we?" Carol smiled at him. Philip Raymond watched as Carol and her associates proceeded to put their equipment into their beaten-up-looking green van. The voice in his head had instructed him to watch them. Though he questioned the reasoning behind this, he didn't dare do it outright, not after the so-called lesson the voice had given him. In his head, the voice chuckled. "Oh, yes, things are going quite well, Philip. Soon all the pieces will fall in place and our drama can begin." "Drama?" Phil said absently to himself, wondering what it meant. Then, when he realized what he'd done, he became scared. The voice became uncomfortably quiet for a second. Phil braced himself for the mind-numbing pain to begin. "Yes, dear boy," the voice said, amused. "Remember this, all of life is but a play, and all of us are simply players, though in this case, Jason and our eternal masters are writing the play." Phil let out his breath and relaxed a bit. It was obvious the voice didn't intend to punish him this time. But still the rather cryptic explanation given failed to shed any more light on what it was he was getting into. "It would be wise if you got the car, Philip," the voice reminded him. "We must follow them." Phil didn't need a second prodding. He headed down the street and got in his brown Galaxy. Once behind the wheel, he turned, looked out the side window, and was relieved that he could still see the back of the green van by looking down through the row of windows of the parked cars next to his. After a few more minutes, the green van started to move. Phil started his car and backed out of his parking place. Then he proceeded to follow the van at a discreet distance. Jamal sat with his back against the tree as he sucked in the smoke from the joint and felt the drowsy feeling flowing through him. It seemed like hours since they arrived at the house the waitress from the coffee shop had said was the home of Stephen Freeman. But then it was hard for Jamal to estimate time since he was totally fried. Nearby, Carol and Sean were standing near the pile of video equipment talking. "So, how much longer do you expect us to sit here and wait, Chief?" Sean asked. "Freeman has to come home sometime," Carol said confidently. "When he does, we're going to be here waiting." "And then what? Freeman wouldn't talk to you before. Why would he suddenly change his mind now?" "I'm not going to give him much of a choice," she said plainly. Jamal chuckled. "I must say, darling, if I was Freeman, I'd be shacking in me bones. In comparison to Jason, Y'all be definitely more scarier. Carol shook her head and looked at Sean. Will you please jam some coffee or something down that pothead's throat? He's smashed. How the fuck is he going to be able to handle a camera in that condition? I told you, girly girl, the smoke helps me with my work, Jamal reminded her. The only thing was I didn't expect to be waiting so long. Carol was about to say something, but Sean cut her off. One thermos of nasty day-old coffee coming up, he said, lifting Jamal up and dragging him along with him back to the van. Phil watched this exchange with amusement. He'd parked his car down the road from the house, making sure it was well hidden from view. Then he walked the rest of the way and hid in the bushes. Now that the sun had set, it was dark enough that he didn't have to worry too much about being seen. Though being heard was another matter, and was something he was definitely being careful about. I congratulate you on your choice of vantage points, the voice said. Phil wasn't interested in the voice's praise. While he'd been able to fight down his hunger for the mask while he'd been running around town observing, now that things had quieted down, the hunger was hitting him stronger than ever. Now all we have to do is wait, observe, and look for the signs. Phil wiped the sweat from his brow. He knew if he told the voice of his discomfort, it would be less than sympathetic. Yes, the voice said, chuckling. It's only a matter of time. Micki looked down at the picture she was holding for what seemed like the 100th time. Though she'd had suspicions all along about Uncle Lewis's connection to Jason's curse, to actually see the proof still amazed her. And she wondered why she had somehow been chosen to see those scenes from the past. For some odd reason, she sensed the hand of Pamela Voorhees in all of this. Maybe it was that Pamela felt it was time for the truth to be revealed. That maybe somehow she and Ryan could finally put Pamela's son's tortured soul to rest. Ryan glanced at her and shook his head. Will we ever be free of Lewis? You would think after being changed into a child and given a second chance at life, I would finally be free. But even after all of this, the taint of Lewis's sins has found a way to draw me back. There have been times the last 18 years that I've envied you. Envied your second chance. Now I can only pity you for all that you've lost, Micki admitted. You've lost more than I have, Ryan said. Micki looked out the truck's window at the onrush of trees. Over the years, she tried to block the memory of her fiancé and all the plans that had been ruined because of Lewis's inheritance. Now she knew that there had been other casualties neither her nor her associates had known about. She knew they could include Lewis's own sister and her son among those casualties. Ryan turned the truck onto the dirt road that led to his house. As they headed up the road, they were surprised to see lights up ahead. What the hell? Ryan said. You expecting anyone? Micki asked. Then they came within view and saw the beat-up-looking green van and its occupants. Oh, crap, Ryan said, exasperated. Who are they, Ryan? Trouble. Sean had been the one who sighted the headlights of the Ford Ranger that was heading up the road toward Stephen Freeman's house. He yelled at the others. Carol immediately went into action and started coordinating with her associates. But to anyone who didn't know better, it looked like she was standing in the road with a microphone in her hand, screaming and cursing at them. Sean, grab that fucking light and get ready, she yelled. Pothead, get that fucking camera off the tripod. You think Freeman's just going to stand there and let you shoot him? This is going to be done handheld, asshole. Carol watched as the blue truck came to a stop in front of them. She saw Freeman turn to the red-haired woman sitting in the passenger seat and say something. But she couldn't hear it and wasn't able to read his lips because of the reflection of Sean's light on the windshield. Then Stephen Freeman got out of the truck and came limping up to her. You have no right to be here. You're trespassing. Stephen Freeman, you remember me from the coffee shop. I'm Carol Martinez. We're shooting a documentary on Jason Voorhees. I told you, young woman, I will have no part in this, Steve Freeman said angrily. But, Stephen, you helped Jessica Voorhees send Jason to hell, or supposedly, if you want us to believe such a way-out thing, Carol said chidingly. For one thing, Jessica's last name never was Voorhees, and for another, there was no supposedly about it. I sent that monster to hell, and in the end it cost me everything I loved, Freeman said, exasperated. Now go away, damn it! I have nothing more to say. I want nothing more to do with Jason Voorhees. That's interesting, Carol said, looking past him at his red-haired companion, who had sneaked out of the truck and was cautiously heading for the front door of the house. Then what is your friend carrying? With that, Carol faked past Stephen, raced up to his companion, and blocked her way. Hello, my name's Carol Martinez, and I'd like to know who you are and what you got wrapped in what looks like a white dress. Jamal had followed after Carol and continued to film. Leave her alone, Freeman yelled, running up to them. You came here to harass me. Leave her out of it. We haven't been trying to harass you, Carol said, feigning a hurt expression. All we want is for you to give us your unique perspective. You came face to face with Jason and survived. Who better to give us the lowdown on him? You want the lowdown? Freeman said, glaring at her. When I looked in that monster's good eye, all I saw was hatred. Hatred for everything and everybody. I saw a being whose only reason for existence is to kill, as bloodily and as mercilessly as possible. Then Freeman grabbed Jamal by his flower-patterned shirt and roughly pushed him back. Now get that damn thing out of my face and get the hell off of my property. But you haven't yet told me what your girlfriend has there, Carol said. With that, she made a grab for the parcel Freeman's red-headed associate was holding. The woman tried to pull away, but the knot binding the dress around its contents came loose. Before the redhead could react, the dress fell open, and the hard-bound books inside fell out onto the ground. Carol looked down at the pile of books and saw the gold-lettered title on one of the covers. And to think, just a few moments ago you said you wanted nothing to do with Jason Voorhees, yet you seem very interested in his mother. My interests are none of your business, Stephen Freeman said, enraged. Now I've told you to get off of my property, or I'll call the sheriff. No problem, Chief, Sean said, grabbing Carol by the arm. We're not finished here, Carol said, outraged by Sean's intervention. I'd say we are, Sean countered. I second that, brother man, Jamal said, lowering the video camera and turning it off. I don't relish the thought of being in the lockup. Let go of me, Carol screamed at Sean as he started to pull her away from Freeman and back towards the van. I'm not finished. There's something going on here, and it's not our business, Sean said, cutting her off. Carol looked back and saw that Freeman and his red-haired associate had picked up the books and were heading into the house. Damn it, she said. She tried to pull away, but Sean had a tight grip on her arm. Can't you understand you're letting this opportunity get away from us? What I understand is that we came here to do a simple documentary, not so you could play investigative reporter. We've got what we needed from Freeman. It's time that we move on. I'm with the brother man on this, Jamal said. I be not relishing the idea of sticking me nose in that man's shite. It not seem very healthy to me. Carol glared at her associates. You both disgust me, she said, finally jerking her arm free from Sean's grip. Here, we could turn this documentary into something significant, but you two don't even have the balls to do it. That's why you two will never make anything of yourselves. With that, she stomped off toward the van. From his hiding place, Phil Raymond observed the scene in front of Stephen Freeman's house. Though he'd been slightly amused by it, he didn't find anything significant about it. The same could not be said for the voice in his head. It was there all the time. I should have seen it, the voice said. What? Phil whispered, though he knew he could have said it with the thought. Thing was, his head was hurting too bad from the renewed hunger for the mask that raked him. For a time, I thought it was these foolish children that would be the key to getting the mask. Now I see that thanks to the Ancient Ones, they have set us once again on the correct path. I don't get it, Phil said. Are you saying you've seen some kind of sign? You noticed those books Miss Foster was trying to protect. Yeah, so? Phil said, unconvinced. And those were the signs? Oh, much more than that, dear boy, the voice told him as if he were a child. Those books are a key unto themselves, a very dangerous key. I'm surprised the Ancient Ones would allow Freeman and his cousin to get possession of them. Why? Those books hold secrets. Secrets that could endanger our plans. Then what are we supposed to do? Steal them back? No, the voice said with conviction. We must have faith. If the Ancient Ones allowed Freeman to find those books, it has to be part of a higher plan. Therefore, we cannot interfere. Then what the fuck are we supposed to do? Sit on our asses and wait? Phil asked angrily, while barely controlling his voice from going higher than a whisper. Exactly, the voice said calmly. Now that they have those books, I feel assured that their path will intersect with the mask. At that moment, we must be ready to take advantage of the situation. Phil did not feel very assured, but he knew he had no choice but to do as he was told. Okay, this has been chapters 5, 6, and 7 of Friday the 13th, The Mask of Jason Voorhees. I gotta say, going into this, I wasn't quite sure of the book series merging with Jason Goes to Hell and then merging with the TV series. I was okay with it merging with Jason Goes to Hell because the whole possession thing kind of stuck. But the TV show, I just wasn't quite sure. But I gotta say, I've been proven wrong, and I am thoroughly enjoying this book so far. And another thing, as we heard in the preface of this book, Eric Morris, William Pattison, a lot of stuff he wanted to put in the other 4 books kept getting cut and cut and cut. But something that popped up in the books here and there was these hellworms. And I always wanted to know more about those as I was reading Mother's Day and Jason's Curse and Carnival and Road Trip. And I was kind of disappointed when they just kind of disappeared. But I'm so glad that he has brought those back into full effect. You know, and what are these hellworms doing breeding around the Jason Voorhees house? You know, what's up with that? Are we going to find out? We shall see. Another thing, what did you guys think of that little flashback that Micki saw between Pamela and Jason the day that he went out and drowned? Let me know what you guys think so far about this book, and I'll be back very soon with more of The Mask of Jason Voorhees. Till then, this has been your friendly neighborhood 80s slasher librarian saying, thanks for listening, and be sure to listen to this entire book, because
it's got a death curse!
Hi, this is William Pattison, known to Friday the 13th fans as Eric Morris, and you are watching the 80s Slasher Librarian's narration of my book, The Mask of Jason Voorhees. Yeah. Enjoy.